Hi, Owais. Welcome to Web3 Digital Marketing Entrepreneur Podcast. It's so great to have an XR developer here. Actually, I never had someone who is, probably working in this job exactly because I've been trying to get someone for so long, and it's really so great to have you here. So please tell a little bit about yourself and how you started in this journey and everything so far.
Cool. Sounds great. Thanks for having me in the first place. So again, my name is Wes. I'm an XR creative XR developer. That's how I like to call myself. I have been working in this domain for almost 3 years at this point. I started during our beautiful time when the world shut down. That is during COVID.
Yeah.
Because my original plan was as a developer, I was going more into the web side of things like
Mm.
React and Node, etc. My original plan was becoming a MERN stack developer, but I think I take COVID as a blessing that during that time period and during that focus period, that's where I figured, oh, there's actually something known as AR.
Mm.
So AR was like kind of my introduction into this whole space. So there's this very popular game engine by the name of Unity.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I started, playing around with it, seeing that okay, this can make games, but it can also make applications.
Mm.
And what I did was there was this SDK which is still available. It's called Vuforia SDK.
Mm-hmm.
I played around with it and I figured that all I have to do is have good 3D knowledge and some programming skills, and I can build an app using Unity, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and that just opened a lot of opportunities for me. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I at that point I was actually a university student,
Mm-hmm.
and that led me to an internship role. And in that internship role, I was able to progress as an AR developer, fully as an AR developer. So yeah, that's like kind of my starting point of how I really started. So I used Vuforia. Many other SDKs were available on Unity, like Wikitude and a bunch of them. Which because again, this was a very entry phase into this whole space. And right then and there, I figured, oh, okay, if I know Unity and if I have these basics, I can progress into VR as well, which
Yeah.
is virtual reality. So I did that for a while. Then that internship role, kind of cemented that okay, this is really what I wanted to do because it was something that I enjoyed doing rather than something which is kind of what I was forced to do.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, like I got a job offer from another company where they hired me first as an AR developer.
Mm-hmm.
Then I progressed through the ranks and stayed there as till the end as an XR developer. Um, and now I am, still as a creative XR developer. That's basically still my whole thing for the time being. But I'll get to as to like what I do, and I mean that's pretty much a very short scenario of how I started. But I'll get to the point of like what I do as an XR developer, um, and essentially like and what I have been doing basically.
Mm-hmm.
So my role specifically is that I work alongside a tech plus creative team. I am kind of like the middle person in between that brings everything together. That's kind of what I feel like the role is. So we have clients
Mm-hmm.
from all around the world, and they come up with ideas and whatnot. So my job is to work both with the creative team and with the tech team, just to make sure that both of these teams are kind of aligned. Because in this domain, as my experience has taught me, you can't really be in one of these things. You can't really just be a developer over here. It's very important for you to understand, okay, what's the creative process, what's the client's needs, what are the client's wants, etc. And you have to work alongside both teams to act kind of like a bridge, and then in
Mm-hmm.
the end bring everything together. So
Got
that's
it.
how generally my job works. We get a brief. I sit with the
Mm.
creative team, think, okay, this is what the creative idea is. Then I tell them our requirements. This is what we would need, etc., etc. And then as a core developer, that's our job is to program and optimize and then deploy, etc., etc. That's kind of how it looks. So yeah, in short, that's a very quick speed run that I've done right there. But I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It did. And I think, a lot of people actually. So before that, I just want to ask one question regarding things that you mentioned is SDK.
Yeah.
So for our audience, if you could explain what SDK is, that would be great.
Sure. So SDK is like a software development kit.
Hmm.
And what an SDK does is, like, for example, I'll I'll try and make it very simple. So like the Fourier SDK, right? What it did was, all I had to do was install that the software development kit into my program, which was Unity, right? Um, and it would have the base things set up. All I would have to do is, like, I would have to incorporate it into my app, in the
Hmm.
sense that, for example, if I want to have an image tracking app where it detects an image and overlays something on it, or for example, if it's a plane detection app where it's detecting the plane around the user and then placing something on it, for example. So that whole detection part, right, the image detection and the plane detection, that already comes built in with the SDK. So we don't have to do the extra effort of, right, developing that whole system
Yeah.
from the ground up. So it makes our job easier, basically. That's, in short, that's what an SDK is. It's a pre-built, a pre-coded build for us to use, as the name suggests, I guess.
Got it. So I think these kind of technologies has been developed like really advanced, right? For example, when I was doing video editing, I kind of had this thought that okay, I had to do everything from scratch.
Yeah.
But the more I did some research, there are a lot of templates oriented stuff. Like you can just drag and drop and all those things. I think with the AR, from when you started, if you see it right now, there'll be a lot of template oriented content already existing online. If I'm correct.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I remember when I started, everything was, we had to do a lot of things from scratch as well. A
Yeah.
lot. Like, it used to be boring. It used to be very annoying as well.
Mm.
And just to do the simple things which we are able to do today, we had to do a lot before, just to even
Mm-hmm.
get started. Because when I started, it was around end of 2019, so it was
Mm.
like very, very early into
Yeah.
the whole phase. And a lot of SDKs or a lot of tools that were available then, at this point, aren't even available now. Like, we played around with them, they came for a while, but they don't exist anymore. So it's a very, very fast paced and ever growing sort of tech space that I'm in at the moment. Yeah.
Cool. The reason why I was saying that is because yesterday I had an interview with a VR developer. So he
Mhm.
has his whole company, and so he's been in this space for almost 6 years. So one point he mentioned is that if Meta, that Facebook company, if they have not shifted their focus to a VR or these sort of technologies, this space wouldn't have matured this much in very short span of time. Because we have seen a lot of technologies that was never looked at, right? But
Yeah.
now if you see this VR headset, coming in, and AR headset, everything is coming around this space. So that was one of the things. And one point I found is that you mentioned that you started your career in AR and went to XR.
Yeah.
So what's mainly the difference? Because AR, VR, and MR is and XR is there. So what's
Yeah.
mainly the difference of these four technologies?
So XR, I would say XR in itself isn't a technology. XR is actually the umbrella term. That's how it
Hmm.
is called. It's called extended reality, but the X over there is like kind of a placeholder.
Yeah.
So that's the placeholder for AR, VR, and MR. So an XR
Hmm.
developer is someone who is capable of doing all these three, basically. Um, and to make it easy and to make it short, basically, I just think AR and VR are the main, is the main tech. MR is still, so I'll kind of define them to make it easier. So AR, that's augmented reality. Augmented reality, plain and simple, is augmenting your real world.
Hmm.
So how we see that, we have our phone devices, right, a handheld device, and we are able to experience an AR experience through it, in the sense that it overlays a digital element into the real
Hmm.
world. So, for example, we have filters, right? How we are using a filter on our face. That's augmenting a digital element onto a real face, right? That's plain and simple. That's AR. VR, which is virtual reality. Virtual reality is literally taking you to a virtual space. It requires a VR headset, specifically a headset which you're able to mount on your head, and then you're able to experience that virtual world in that headset.
Hmm.
That's plain and simple virtual reality. Mixed reality is basically an extended version of augmented reality.
Hmm.
So a good example is how the Meta Quest Pro headset,
Yeah.
right, where you're able to get that pass through experience. And in that pass through experience, what you're doing is that you're wearing that headset, but you're at the same time able to see the real world, and at the same time able to interact with digital elements like the digital world and the real world are coexisting with each other.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like AR, but with the added element of like you're using different a different device, for example. So how we are eventually going to get these mixed reality headsets like the
Hmm.
HoloLens that's
Yeah.
already there, and how Meta is planning to make more headsets with more interactive and more enhanced faster experience.
Hmm.
So in short, that's what the XR term is, and an XR developer is just someone who is able to who is proficient in all of these three categories.
Understood. Because I've seen a lot of these news coming in every single day mentioning Xiaomi is entering this market,
Yeah.
and a lot of other people are entering the market, and they're choosing. Okay, should we do AR? Should we do VR? Should we do MR? But I think one point I wanted to what everyone said is that whatever technology that you're creating, if you're creating a headset that is not able to be viewed in real life as well, like having a pass through, then it will be an issue. Because
Yeah.
I was just imagining, like, okay, if I buy a VR headset and going on a walk in my terrace, I have to be really careful. I have to be
Yeah.
really careful, like where to stop and where to, turn around. Otherwise, it will be a major concept. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good explanation that you had there. So another concept you mentioned is you were kind of a bridge between the tech team and the client and all other people as well. So would you able to give a small example? You don't need to mention any project's name, like a small example of, okay, this a hypothetical example, even it's fine. Like this is a example, and this is how I kind of coordinated two people, because I just want to give the people, okay, this is what you will do if you are becoming an XR developer.
Yes. Yeah. Understood. Like it makes perfect sense. So I'll give an example of like one of the projects that I did. It was like a VR experience that we had to create, and the client had like a particular space that they wanted us to kind of develop that into VR, like a
Mm.
real world space that they wanted us to bring it into VR and make it interactive and whatnot. So I'll kind of go through it step by step, but keeping it short and easy. Uh, the first thing is like obviously the client comes to us, gives us the idea and everything. Now my job is to sit with the creative team and make sure we both are aligned. So as a developer, so whenever people think of developers, right, they think that okay, all we have to do is like coding, programming, and that's it. But in this space specifically, I disagree. I think you need to go a bit more than just knowing programming. Programming isn't going to take you further in this field, like programming itself. So you need to have a very good 3D knowledge. Like an XR developer needs to know 3D. They
Mm.
need to know how 3D models work. They need to know the basics at least. They need to know what vertices are, what a mesh is, what triangles are. All that detail when it comes to 3D, they need to know have a knowledge about that. How textures work, how shaders work, etc., etc. There's a 3D in itself is a very different and a very big world, but you need to know the core aspects of it just so you have an idea.
Mm.
And I'll get to that why that's important. So we sit with the creative team, we align on everything, make sure that okay, this is how the whole user experience is going to look like. This is how the design should be. This is how everything should look like overall. After that, when we move into development, first of all, the main thing we have to do is make sure everything is optimized along the way.
Mm.
So right now, the biggest challenge that we have as developers is optimization, I feel. And if you don't know optimization, I think that's a very bad position to be in. And
Mm.
I'll explain what I mean by optimization as well. So for example, right now in the project that we were creating, it was on the Oculus headset,
Mm.
because the Oculus Quest 2 specifically, was a headset that was pretty cheap. Like
Yeah.
it retailed at $400. Everyone was able to access it, and it made things very very easy for clients as well,
Mm.
for all the clients to get into this space. So to back up your point of the VR development that you mentioned, that is actually very true. That is how the space has grown. It's because of Meta.
Yeah.
So that headset specifically speaking, if you look at it, even though it's like a wireless headset, it's not fully it's not a beefy system. you know
Mm.
it does not have the most high spec CPU or GPU in it. It's like a mobile device. It's very small. It has a CPU and a GPU of a mobile device basically.
Mm.
So if we have to make an experience which has 3D models, interactions, and whatnot, we can't really have high end, 3D
Yeah.
models or high end textures and everything into it. So that's where our job is, first of all, mainly. So when we sit with the creative thing, that's what we tell them. The 3D models have to be, for example, they have to have these many meshes only, or the textures need to be this size only, or
Hmm.
they can have these many parts. For example, if there's a building, for example, that building needs to be a single mesh rather than having multiple elements to it, because the
Yeah.
more elements it will have, the more time it will need to render. But
Hmm.
we can simplify it. We, for example, can just have it as one mesh, and we can let our texture and shaders do the other thing,
Hmm.
for example. And you can learn all of this once you have that shader and 3D knowledge. So like
Hmm.
if you feel like, no, as a developer you don't need to learn all of that, that's where you will find a challenge, that you won't be able to understand it. Okay, how can I be smart and optimize and make sure I can save space, etc., etc. So yeah, that's like the design process, making sure everything is optimized. Then they send us the assets, we optimize them first of all, make sure everything is doing good, and that's when then we move into development. Like we put it into the our platform, whatever we are using. In that case, we were using Unity.
Hmm.
um, we choose our, again, SDK, what SDK that we want to go with. In this case, we were using the Oculus SDK. And then after that we start building on the interactions. So
Hmm.
the interactions are like we start coding them in the sense that, for example, what's the movement going to be like how
Hmm.
would the user move in this environment? Are they going to use the analog stick on the VR headset, or are they going to just walk in real life, for example,
Yeah.
or are they not going to walk at all, and are they going to be like um, locomotion points, basically, where if they tap on it, they are able to teleport in that location, and they're
Hmm.
able to just have that experience like that. Because again, as a when it comes to VR and developing for VR, one of the main things that we have to focus on is motion sickness. Yeah, because if you wear a headset for a very first time, you're going to get a lot of motion sickness,
Wow.
because again, your mind isn't able to process it in that way. So again, that's again our job to make sure that what methods are we using. Again,
Hmm.
I'll give a very small example for that. In our case, when we were doing it, the client wanted us to do, so in the Oculus headset we
Hmm.
have controllers, right? And
Yeah.
on the controller there is an analog stick.
Hmm.
Um, and since everyone has gamed in their life, and we are very much kind of attracted to, or we know how to move a player just using the joystick, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we are accustomed to. But if we try to do that in VR, it is possible. It's not like it's not possible. The issue is that the player will be moving, right? But since we are in that headset and we see the camera moving, our mind isn't able to compute that with our physical body. So our
Yeah.
mind thinks that we are moving, but in reality we aren't. And that disconnect causes motion sickness. It will cause so much motion sickness that you won't be able to, have a good experience, and you might even end up throwing up. That's how bad it gets. So the workaround for that was that we added a vignette effect, which is very common. That's the popular solution. We
Yeah.
add a vignette effect around the user's eyes, just so they don't get that motion sickness at all. And the other suggestion is that we use teleportation, where what it does is that we create locomotion points,
Hmm.
where if the user interacts with that specific location, they just teleport the user in that place, and then they are able to experience it in that way. So in our case, that's what we did. And then they had certain interactions that, if there were certain buildings, like they wanted us, the
Hmm.
user, to open the door, for example, go inside the building, or like certain points, like if they go into those certain points, they're able to collect some rewards, etc.
Hmm.
And overall, they just wanted a visual experience. That was the end goal. So yeah, I hope I haven't complicated it too much, but in short, like
No,
that how
no,
we.
this was perfect actually, because I've been thinking this motion sickness I've actually never heard about, to be honest,
Okay.
because I've dealt with a lot of people, but this motion sickness, and I really get that, because it would be really weird. Even there are a lot of people who actually get sick when they're going on a bus or
Yeah.
train, So considering that, it really makes sense. And one point that you mentioned is the quality of the platform, like the digital world that you mentioned. And I just want to ask: is this the reason why the Horizon Worlds is not what Meta promised to be? Because they promised like huge world, like how GTA 5 in VR
Yes.
would have been, but it was more like very 2D characters and everything was. Is it because of that headset was like that?
Yeah, definitely. That is the reason, and a lot of, I mean, if all the platforms that you look at the moment, since the whole metaverse hype, when Meta announced it for the first time, and the metaverse hype that we have seen all over 2022, everyone wanted to get into the metaverse. We saw Decentraland coming up, we saw
Yeah.
Sandbox, we saw Spatial, and if you look at all of these platforms, the graphics and everything aren't top tier, are they? They
Yeah.
aren't amazing, or even like you just mentioned, when even Mark Zuckerberg released that um, famous picture of
Yeah.
Horizon Worlds for Spain and France, it got a huge backlash, and
Hmm.
that's primarily the reason, because I feel like the whole metaverse space is too ahead of its time right now. It's too early. There is
Hmm.
still, in my opinion, if you ask me, it's going to be streamlined and everything in like 10 years time.
Yeah.
Like that's where I feel that's the right figure, when we'll have devices which are able to give us like PC level performance in a
Hmm.
very small, form factor. Because
Hmm.
right now we can't get that level of performance in a mobile device, for example. You know,
Yeah.
so that is the reason that a lot of the things that we see are like very very low polish, not very good looking per se. And that's again that's where my point comes in, that as an XR developer, our job,
Hmm.
that we have to make sure that we are giving you the best looking thing in
Hmm.
the most optimized way possible, basically. So
Understand.
that's a challenge every time for us, because clients come to us and they have expectations of a GTA game, but we end
Yeah.
up giving them something which is a very low end game. So we have to always make sure we get those expectations right from clients.
Hmm.
And when it comes to development, there are a lot of techniques and a lot of ways. It just comes to your experience, how good you are as a developer, that you are able to give them that experience in a very limited amount of
Hmm.
capacity. So there's that.
Exactly. And one point I really agree is that when you mention the developers, you necessarily having the coding skills is not enough, because there's a lot of tools that came in, after the AI revolution, or everything. It made your job easy, but it just pushing the human more towards, you need to know what you want. Like the
Yeah,
concept of, you need to know what you want and you need to know what to say. Like it's the previous phase of, the communication is the key. Like
yeah.
that came in. So I think that's a pretty good thing. So as an XR developer, as you mentioned, like you need more than this just developing skills. Would you suggest any qualitative skills that people should have? Like, creativity is one in general
Yeah.
sense, that can be it, but anything from your experience that you can say that, these are the qualitative skills that if you could have, it will be better.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think I'll give my example. When
Hmm.
I started, I was purely like a programmer, right? All I did was coding, just learning languages and whatnot.
Hmm.
Since I've shifted in this space, I think there are only two languages that I've stuck with since then. One is JavaScript and the other is C Sharp.
Hmm.
Um, that's it, to be honest, till this day. And other than that, I mean, the thing that I realized was very very important, I think first up is creativity,
Hmm.
because XR, I think, is a space that requires a lot of creativity from you, from within you. It's a very, this whole virtual space isn't something that you can do without having any creativity, for example. So there's that, definitely. The
Hmm.
other thing is, like I mentioned, I'll say it again, it's 3D. So design and 3D. I'm not saying that you need to go ahead and learn how to become a designer or how to become like a 3D artist and whatnot, but have at least the basics of how these things work. Have the knowledge
Hmm.
of how a 3D model is. So what I ended up doing is I ended up learning a 3D software which is Blender.
Yeah.
It's a free open source software. Everyone can use it at this point, and that's what I ended up doing. I ended up learning how to, how can I make my own 3D model. Okay,
Hmm.
and that's how I learned that, okay, this is how I can, this is how a 3D model is, this is how many meshes it has, how many vertices it has. And that's what I end up doing in my day-to-day job as well. Like, we download some third party models, or um, like, for example, if we download that free model, right,
Hmm.
how are you going to be able to play around with it if you don't know the basics of 3D
Yeah.
then? you know
Yeah.
so essentially, 3D I feel is very, very important. It's not touched upon that much. You really need to have like a good amount of knowledge in that. So yeah, it's creativity, design, and 3D have a bit of this. And at the very end, I think it's logical thinking. How good is your logical thinking in the sense that how good of a problem solver you are?
Hmm.
Because when you're in the space, you're going to run in a lot of places where your problem solving skills are going to save you. And I like to think of myself as a very good problem solver because when whichever project I have worked on or whichever project I keep working on, we run into problems every time, every single time. And I'm not like trying to say that we XR developers are the only one that run into
Yeah.
problems. But it's like the skill that you ask, right? That what
Hmm.
are the skills that we really, really need to have? I think problem solving is one of that skill that we really need to have, because when it comes to projects like these, like for example, if a client sends us an asset that they want this 3D model to be in their experience, but they
Hmm.
end up sending us a 3D model which is like 1 GB in size, right? How
Yeah.
do we optimize it? How do we play around with it? Or how do we make sure that the client is still happy and we are still able to develop our experience as well? So good
Hmm.
logical thinking and good problem solving, and with the experience you're able to develop the skill as well. So I think that's I would say, like, yeah, those are like the 4 points, 4 or 5 points I would say that everyone should have in their arsenal.
Got it. Because one of the reasons why I really think the qualitative skill matters a lot, because I actually, my brother is kind of like a guy who's have 10 years of experience. He's 8 years older than me. And whenever I see him, he's been a developer for his whole life. And whenever I see him, he always goes to GitHub and then copy paste some, code. Some always do that. I'm like, you did this your 10 years of life and you're earning this much. How is this even possible? Because I'm actually a digital marketer. So whenever I'm doing marketing, I really can't implement that. I don't have a code
Yeah,
or I don't have anything anywhere. I need to make sure, okay, this is what the audience wants, this is what they want. And I have to literally prick my brain. I'm not saying it's, developers jobs are easy,
yeah,
but the resources that it has, it's very high. There are communities and all that stuff. It's pretty high. So the quality stuff really matters a lot. But have you faced any particular problem? Can you give an example? I just want to get it. Just any particular problem like that you thought, okay, this is going to screw up my entire day, but finally I solved it. Do you have any example on
I mean, I have a lot when it comes to that. So I think one of the examples was, yeah, that I just mentioned, that a client wanted a 3D model incorporated in one of their experience, and the 3D model that they shared with us was extremely high
that?
detailed and high definition. And we requested that we can't really use this 3D model in our experience, but they said that it's a must, and they didn't have the resource for it.
Hmm.
And since we were on a time crunch, we couldn't really outsource it to someone else. So what I ended up doing was, since I knew a bit of Blender and everything, I went it to the communities, and I think that's where I agreed at your point as well. We developers have a lot of resources and a lot of communities. It's just up to the developer themselves how smart they are and how committed they are in terms of like finding the right resource and everything. And that's when through help with the community and a lot of other things, I was able to find a tool
Hmm.
what it was able to do was able to um, guide me as to how I can optimize those 3D models. So, for example, if a 3D model is it has like a million triangles.
Hmm.
Um, so, for everyone listening, a triangle is like what forms a mesh of a 3D model. That sounds complicated, but when you see the shape of a 3D model, it's made of a bunch of triangles
Yeah.
which form a mesh. So a million triangles is like a very high detailed one, and we as developers have to stay within the limit of like 50,000 or like less than 50,000 ideally, right? So what I ended up doing was I ended up figuring out that, okay, if I use this tool, this will be able to remesh that model for me. And remeshing is basically um, bringing down the number of triangles while making sure that the detail is still pretty much there. So that's how I did that. But then I realized, okay, what there's something known as like the texturing of it, uh, of the 3D models, but there are those 3D models have number of maps for those
Hmm.
textures. So there's like a normal map, a roughness map, and each of these maps adds an artificial detail to the 3D model. So if a 3D model in its mesh does not have that detail, for example, the texture will do that job in making sure it fakes that detail on top of it.
Hmm.
So for that particular model, which the clients, and I was able to bring it down to like 30,000, and then using the texture techniques, I was able to still maintain like 90% of what it was, but
Hmm.
there was like a day and night difference in terms of how it looked, and we were able to then use it in our experience because it was optimized, and we were then able to go ahead with it.
So it's kind of okay. What I'm going to say might really agitate you, but this is kind of like bringing down a PNG to a JPG. Like that sort of same
Kind of,
quality.
yeah,
Yeah,
kind of, yeah.
yeah. I sorry. I know it was very simplified, like after mentioning, but I think from my perspective with this XR space, I was really trying to build something in the Unity when I was having my really old laptop. It was not working properly,
Yeah.
but I think you really gave a detailed explanation of like, okay, these are the tools, these are the things, these are the problems, so easily solve it. So that
Yeah,
was really great. Now, before going into the final section, is it morning or evening there? What time is it?
it's evening over there, yeah.
Okay. So the question is like, who was actually the last person that you made smile today?
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question. I think it was, I think, my reporting manager, because um, the new role that I'm in right now, the reason I joined in this role was because of him.
Hmm.
And I have been blessed to be working with a lot of talented and a lot of like very experienced people, right?
Hmm.
So we were stuck in a very big problem since like last week, and we were just trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to solve this.
Hmm.
And him and I, we worked on it together, and we were able to like finally solve it today. So yeah, we had like a very good session on that, and we kind of both had a smile on that. So I think, yeah, that was the last person, pretty much. But yeah,
Awesome, awesome. So, just moving on to the last section is that
yeah,
so one is regarding the space, place that you're living in. We are in Dubai right now.
yeah.
Now, I know there's a lot of investment that's been going on, in Dubai regarding the metaverse and all the spaces. So, at one point, I'm really happy that one country is taking forward, the next gen, kind of technology. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this will sustain, or are they doing it for the trend or PR stunt? I don't know. So, what would be your thoughts as the XR developer? The futuristic place in the place that you're living in right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think me coming to Dubai, my primary reason was I saw that there was a lot of investment going on over here.
Mm.
And when the government in itself is investing that much money, that's where things are a bit interesting. It really
Mm.
kind of fascinates you that, okay, there might be something here. So that's what I ended up, taking this decision, and I decided to move over here. And I do like follow a lot of the things that are happening over here. I do end up going in a lot of sessions and a lot of meetups and whatnot, just to see that, okay, uh, is this really just for the trend, or are they really considering to invest and grow this? I think it's 50-50, I would say.
Mm.
It's like good and bad apples everywhere,
Yeah.
that's the kind of example. So the in some places where they're trying to invest, it makes sense. Like, for example, over here they're eagerly trying to invest into healthcare, the
Mm.
education sector, and these are sectors which make a lot of sense, which
Yeah.
give the use case of the XR space a lot of value, basically. But then there are a lot of those other metaverse projects, some NFT projects, and that space is a bit finicky.
Mm.
It doesn't really make that much sense to be pumping in that much money in those projects. So I think that in itself is just for the trend.
Mm.
But yeah, overall, I think it's fair enough. That's what I feel like. I can't really say that it's all going to waste, and I can't really say that it's all going for to benefit it all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a mixed bag overall.
Cool. I think one of the things that you also wanted to mention is this the metaverse mall because I got this news and I don't know. I think for to some extent for those people who actually have the facilities, then yeah,
Yeah,
maybe I mean people in Dubai like okay the tourists and all the people. I think they would definitely love this technology. So
yeah,
I mean metaverse shopping has been really going in a lot of places. So I think this would be a pretty good initiative.
definitely.
So just following up on that is the final thing that I want to ask is this for those people who are listening and they want to create let's say their own portfolio. So I think in my version, for an XR developer or VR developer, if they could have a portfolio of a virtual world, that would be like pretty crazy. So they can still like, I think, this is the world, go and visit in this space. It would be great. So would you be able to give like a brief step by step process of creating that virtual world, and then obviously they can use it to present it to their manager or whoever that is.
Yeah, yeah, sure. That makes perfect sense. I think so. When it comes to making a virtual world, right? If you're trying to build it from scratch, that's a big challenge. And obviously, if you're just starting off, it will be way too overwhelming because a virtual world isn't really that simple. Like considering how far this whole tech has come, the whole metaverse space has come. Even, you need to build an IPFS storage system first. You need to know what smart contracts are. You need to know how you can incorporate that world with the blockchain and all. It's very complicated. Like at the start. Um, so I think my recommendation is that what people could do is we all know about the virtual space spatial, right? And when you sign up for spatial, you're able to you have your own workplace, like your own space over there as well. And what spatial lets you do as well is make custom environments and lets you design your own space as well. So I think a good starting point is like just go on to spatial, play around with it, and just make a custom space over there. Make sure you have like your own wallet, like an
Mhm.
NFT wallet, like MetaMask, for example, and all that. Because what Spatial lets you do is it's able to let you connect your wallet with its backend. Basically,
Yeah.
it's very seamless in that way. So in that way, for example, if you are an NFT geek and if you have your NFTs, you can display those NFTs in that space as well. Like
Mm.
it's not a must, but I'm just suggesting that that's also something you can do. So that's like a good starting point that you can go into. But in terms of like portfolio, like if I'm being
Yeah.
brutally honest, what really matters is what you're able to sort of do with your skill set.
Mm.
So if you have made a spatial environment, sure, that's your portfolio to start off. But I think picking up a platform like Unity and developing spaces over there, like custom spaces, and it does not have to be like full fledged, like for example just creating an app in like a VR app where what you're able to do is like there's a table and you're able to interact with certain elements, and if you just have a video of that, even I think that's enough. Because I mean that's how I started off, at the start even I used to think that I need to build full-fledged apps and
Mm.
whatnot, but I luckily had a very good mentor who just said that you need to start, and if it's good enough, just put it forward, and
Yeah.
that's all you need in my opinion, like in all honesty. um, if you have that as a starting point, it's good enough to get your foot into the door, and then you can build up from there.
Got it, got it. And I think the one point that you mentioned is like, not building from scratch, because I can really understand, when it was starting stage of the metaverse trend and everything, I was writing blogs regarding, how to build a metaverse world, and I was writing so much bluff because there was no information available on how to actually create it.
Yeah,
Like these tools or spacious and everything that wasn't very popular back then, just
yeah.
became popular, in the recent days. So I think that's a pretty good point. So great. So and always thanks so much, for hopping onto the show. It was really great conversation. We had a lot of amazing, interesting stuff. So for those people who are aspiring to be, developers in this metaverse space, would be really happy. Now, tables turned. Is there anything else that you want to ask me?
No, I think I went through your profile as well, and I feel like you are more into the digital marketing space. I
Yeah.
think the only thing my question would only be specifically regarding this is when you see metaverse campaigns, for example, or like
Hmm.
when you see metaverse, because in the digital marketing space there are a lot of like filter campaigns,
Yeah.
like people make a lot of filters on these platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok. And when it comes to NFT projects and whatnot, what's your, as a digital marketer, like how do you see those campaigns? Do you feel like those, because some of them end up winning awards as well, and do you think like those awarded campaigns are fair, or are they just like they could have been better, etc.? So yeah, that
Sure.
that would be a
So
question.
Yeah. So actually, you know, as a marketer, I think I have this thought that any new technology that comes, and if a business is planning on using it, they'll use it for two purpose. One is for profit earning, and number two is for the marketing purpose,
Yeah,
like to market their business. Any technology for that matter. So if this metaverse came, I mean, imagine if H&M or Gucci, these people coming in having their spaces in a Decentraland or Sandbox or wherever it is. It's not for just showcase. It's for some marketing related context. So
definitely.
I think, and with the technologies which have Facebook and Google, like if whatever you're talking right now, if I close this and open my YouTube, on the right side it will say, but you want to buy MetaQuest. Like they have the technology to listen to everything right now. Imagine having a VR headset and they can see where your eyes are moving mostly, and they can decide, okay, this place is where this guy is seeing a lot of time, place an ad there, bid that banner place a lot of money. So this is how it will go. So it's kind of like a revolutionary place where you get a lot of data because they're getting the whole spatial data, like
Yeah,
the whole face they are getting. It's pretty scary, but still I think that's an inevitable concept. So some technologies, like as you mentioned, like NFTs and all, the trading was in my opinion is very bad. Okay, I really hate these trading concepts, whether it's stock market or whatever it is.
yeah,
But recently Starbucks and Porsche, they got these people, they did NFT campaigns. Porsche was very bad, they didn't properly do it, so it was a pretty burst. But Starbucks did a very good job. So I think, from a marketing perspective, if you don't tell people that it's an NFT, and if you tell people that it's a loyalty program, they'll buy. That's what Starbucks mainly did. It's they're like,
yeah.
okay, if you're bringing a new term, they'll be like, no, 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 this is a
Mhm.
scam. I don't want any new terminologies. You give the technology, just tell me what I can get.
Yeah,
So if they could market in that way, that would be better. My main interest came to the virtual realities because of uh, because of the concept of this data collection, like how they could gather a lot of data and how marketers can actually do a lot of amazing job in it. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's why if you see in my profile, you have like Metaverse and Web3 marketer. I mean, I'm not a fully fledged guy in that yet. I'm still learning. So yeah, that's what I do. Whenever I want to be something, I just put it and I'll learn it afterwards.
yeah.
If I
I
learn
mean,
it,
that's how it is supposed to be as well. Even like with my 3 years of experience, I can't really say I'm like the best XR developer out there. I know there are a lot of people, and to be honest, every day is a learning day. It's kind of like my passion, and I see that passion in you as well. That when you have that passion, you end up just taking a start, and your passion kind of helps you get into that position eventually.
yeah.
So yeah, it makes perfect sense to be honest. But it was a nice perspective that you gave right there in terms of the whole data collection thing. I mean, that's kind of very interesting the way I think about it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a this is one point I want to add is that when I studied marketing, I stopped trusting people because just imagine after studying marketing, you'll feel like whenever someone is doing something good to you, you'll be like, "What do you want from me? Why are you giving some?" It'll be like giving a discount or something. I mean, like, what's the catch? What do you
Yeah,
what
yeah,
do
yeah.
you want there? So marketing has really made my brain think in a very different way. But I think that's why I like whenever I see something, I feel in a marketing manner. So yeah, so let's see how this all this technology goes, and hopefully one day
We'll see.
let's see.
Yeah, yeah, let's see. It's exciting times, and I mean the times. It's. I mean, the last thing I think I would like to add from my end is that if anyone listening to this is like considering into moving into the space, I think right now is still the best time because everything is moving so quickly and so fast that you know it's not like there's still a lot of competition in any way. It's still, I don't feel like this field is still oversaturated in any way. There's still a lot of space to play with and to innovate in, for example. So if you have the basic skills, like if you have the basic skills already mentioned, and if you have a good circle, and if you're good at networking, and if you're good at LinkedIn, I don't see why you can't get into this space as well. So everyone is aspiring to like get into this space. I think right now is the perfect time, and because like 2 or 3 years later, this everything is going to change instantly. Like
Yeah.
with the progression of AI and how fastly things are, moving at the moment, we can expect a lot of changes in like a matter of years already. So yeah, that's like my final bit on this.
Cool. So, always in case people want to find you, or some people want to inquire about your services, where would be the best place?
Personally, like the best place is LinkedIn. I feel that's where I'm mostly active. Um, in terms of like my profile, my services, and everything, that's the best possible place. Other than that, it's my Instagram. I'm not really that much active on it, but like if you still want to get a bit into my personal life for some reason, I think that's kind of where Instagram is that place. But primarily, it's LinkedIn, and my website as well. So my website is primarily just a portfolio website. I like to dump in whatever I do over there. um, so yeah, there's that. It's ideally these three places.
Cool, cool. So, guys, I'll definitely link everything in the description below, so you can go and check them out. And always, thanks so much again, for hopping on the show. It really means a lot. And guys, I'll see you in the next episode.